agenda. So this time, I want to call the meeting to order. We'll start with Chancellor, and I'm Susan Sameh Gasecki. Please come up and thank you. Want to come and have a few opening comments? We appreciate the hospitality of IU Kokomo, and we spent the day at Ivy Tech also and at Miami Correctional Facility. So great to be in North Central Indiana.
Well, thank you all for coming, and we just want to give you a warm welcome. I did get to spend quite a bit of time with you at dinner and this morning at breakfast, so I feel like we got to tell our story a little bit, so we appreciate you being here, but more importantly, we appreciate you listening to our story and supporting the goals that we have. So thank you so very much, and welcome everyone to campus.
Sometimes we have locally elected officials. I'm scanning the room. I don't see anybody that locally elected officials. No? Oh. If you are, stand up and be noted. Thank you. At this time, we'll also do introductions around the table. I'm Tim Brown, Chairman of the Budget Committee. I'm State Representative, District 41, Crawfordsville, Chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. And I'll start, since you're not looking, Zach, you want to start?
Hi, I'm Zach Jackson, Deputy State Budget Director.
Deanna Owari, Deputy State Budget Director with the State Budget Agency.
Hi, Chris Rivera, Fiscal Analyst with the Senate Republican Caucus.
Ryan Mishler, State Senate, District 9.
Bob Cherry, State Representative, District 53, Greenfield, and southern part of Madison County.
Alicia Knapziger, Fiscal Analyst for the House Republicans.
David Reynolds, Fiscal Analyst, Senate Republican.
Luke Kenley, State Senate, District 20, and Chair of the Appropriations Committee in the Senate.
Ben Tooley, Fiscal Analyst for the House Republicans.
Brian Bailey, Budget Director for Governor Pence.
Representative Terry Gooden, represent parts of Jefferson County, Clark County, and all of Scott County.
Eric Gonzalez, House Democrat, Fiscal Analyst.
Sheila Klinker, District 27, and that includes Lafayette and parts of West Lafayette.
Karen Talion, State Senate from District 4, which is up Porter County and Michigan City.
Susan Preble, Fiscal Analyst for the Senate Democrat Caucus.
Jim Landers, I'm the Fiscal Director for Legislative Services.
Thank you all. As I said, the meeting has been called to order. The minutes are in your packet for information. They were walked around after the last meeting in April and signed, so they have been approved by the Budget Committee. So there, at this time, doesn't need to be any action, but they are there for information. A proposed agenda has been distributed to all members and released to the public. Are there any amendments to the proposed agenda?
Question.
Senator Talion.
Are we doing the, so the Gary Airport issue has been removed from the agenda already?
Correct. The official published agenda does not have it on.
Okay, all right. Will that be back on for September?
I think we'll have discussions. We looked at the CPA cover letter, and I think there were some issues that we need to delve in further.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing none, the agenda is placed on the table for discussion. We do have a lengthy agenda. I don't think, it's highly controversial, so we'll be able to get through it in rapid order, but it is lengthy, and so we'll start right away. First, we have agency projects and Department of Corrections. Mr. Orm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the committee. It was my pleasure yesterday to give you a tour of Miami Correctional Facility. As I stated, it is probably one of the best designed large prisons in the country. Its physical plant layout is very conducive to good security and good safety for our staff. I've placed a diagram in front of you on a legal-sized piece of paper. That's a layout of the Westville Correctional Facility, the reverse of what I just discussed. That's a $1.2 million, 66-year-old state psychiatric hospital that we chose to turn into a correctional facility. The facility still functions.
Yes.
The offenders are housed in long linear dormitories that you'll see outlined. They're in two-man rooms that we've taken the doors off of, and those are the numerous dead spots. The facility has a lot of extra room, unused space under roof that we heat, cool, and maintain. The project that we're looking for is to develop the master plan for the facility, to do some investigation. We think we've already come up with some pretty good conclusions. And over the next 2 years, put together a good workable master plan, verify, validate some of the data that we've developed, and bring to you a good defined plan on what to do with that property. It is just a $200,000 request for engineering for a company that we've selected that deals specifically with this kind of old prison renovation, and we'll take our most recent data, including some of the changes that we've discussed as an effect of House Bill 1006, with the lengthier, the more violent felons serving lengthier sentences, incorporate that into our plan.
Thank you. Kevin, for review, and then I presume would be some renovation and facility projects, but they won't be timely for the budget presentation for 17, would they? I mean, you're not going to get a report by
No, sir.
December
that is not.
17.
There's no anticipation of that at all. This will be for something that we'll have thoroughly vetted within 2 years and be ready for the next budget development period.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you. Next. Go ahead.
Sir, the next project, I've been very proud. I've mentioned this committee on several occasions that there's been no shingle nailed on any DOC facility by a contractor within my tenure. I'm going to have to take a step back from that. At Putnamville Correctional Facility in April of this year, we had a major windstorm. We have a chapel there, a historic chapel from the late 1920s. We had finished a complete renovation. We had a windstorm, took down all kinds of power lines, and took part of the roof off of that building. We already have all of our workforces engaged on projects throughout the year. We could not go back and reorient them and still meet our project schedules and our commitments. And furthermore, this is a 12 pitch roof, 8 stories in the air. So it is literally a steeple, 8 stories in the air. And this is for the replacement of that roof, replacement of the decking. We'll put a 50-year shingle back on that and should never have any problem with winds again, which is our hope.
Any questions, Kevin? Thank you.
In 2015, we were doing a renovation of the administration building at the Indiana Reformatory, the Pendleton Correctional Facility in Pendleton, Indiana. I threw in some pictures on your desk because this is a project that is a little hard to explain. You'll see something there that's called the gable end walls. In the 1930s era of prison construction, one of the means they used at the time is called the telegraph pole design. It's long linear cell houses, multiple tiers all coming back to a central connecting hallway. It's a wonderful design. It makes for good security even in this era, but it does not make for good physical maintenance where those cell houses all come together above the central core. As we were doing the renovation of the administration building, we were up walking around on the roof. We started exploring some of the other stuff we've seen. Looks like they've attempted repairs, parts, the areas in 1950. This project goes back and covers those with standing steam steel, and they should never be a problem again. Sorry.
Go ahead.
The next project is for the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy.
Any questions on Pendleton?
Mr. Goodpaster is the executive director of the Law Enforcement Academy. We've worked this project with the ILEA staff and with the DAPW staff. The ILEA is 171,000 square feet under roof, built in 1974. Its current chiller system is an R123, a very antiquated R123 system that uses a water cooling tower. We made some recommendations. We think we have patched the system back to get it through this summer. We don't believe that its odds are very good past that. This project goes back and replaces that R123 chiller with a new modern centrifugal chiller with VFDs, the most energy efficient system that we know of. And it's actually an identical installation to what we did at the Correctional Industrial Facility last year, so we're very familiar with that. We've helped put this project together with the ILEA. It also replaces a $70,000 pad mount transformer from the original 1977 construction for a project value of $425,000. Timing is very important. We want to have it, if approved, we want to have it installed and operational for spring next year.
You said VFD acronym. What is VFD?
I'm sorry, variable frequency drives, a new type of electric engine that just electrical motor that takes just a lot less energy, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions on?
Just one.
Go
Do we
ahead,
have a,
Sandra.
do we have a line, I'm looking at the funding source, do we have a line item that says law enforcement training construction?
I cannot answer that, ma'am.
It's not a line item, but it was funding in the budget for this purpose.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Any further questions? Senator
So two general comments. Number one, under House Bill 1006, Department of Corrections has a fair amount of discretion in terms of reviewing and returning funds to locals for different types of treatment programs and projects that we have through the community corrections and probation and things like that. Things that it's sort of a build on of what you've done in the past. It's not your responsibility. I think it would be helpful as we prepare for next year's budget that we get Department of Corrections perspective on where and how they've pushed that money back and what kind of uses it's going for. There seems to be some confusion in the local world as to whether funds are actually showing up anywhere or not. And I'd like to hear Department of Corrections, since it's money that you decide where it goes, I'd like to hear your perspective on that to make sure we're making 1006 work the way it should. Second thing is, you gave a pretty good presentation yesterday on the Penn Products programs, and it was really quite amazing some of the positive things that we're doing in terms of work product being developed, such as the Braille interpretation program and things of that nature. And I think there was mentioned yesterday that it's some anniversary of how long we've been doing a Penn Products program. And I think it would probably be a possible good idea for you all to work with Dr. Brown and I to maybe even have some kind of a resolution talking about some of that where we can present it to the rest of the General Assembly once we get into session so that people have a little better feel for just how successful that program's been.
I'll make sure that data is put together for you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to item 5, Richmond State Hospital. Mr. Babb.
Committee members, I'm presenting a project for Richmond State Hospital to replace a 1,300-gallon hot water heater that's placed in their central steam plant. There's been several patches numerous times, and to date it's not meeting the requirements of pressure vessels for Homeland Security.
Any question? Thank you. Item 6.
We're requesting a replacement of the last 2 chillers at Logansport State Hospital, one on the dietary building, which was built in 1981. This is original equipment, and the Fogel building, which was constructed in 67 but remodeled in 89. Both of these units are suffering several compressor failures, and it's requiring considerable maintenance, and I cannot guarantee cooling during the summer in either of these buildings.
Do you think for the rest of this summer it will limp through, or?
I just bought another compressor for one of them, so I got my fingers crossed.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you. Item 7.
Next projects for Evansville State Hospital. It's replaced activity building roof and warehouse siding. The activity building was built in 1960. The warehouse was built in 1965 when they replaced the major hospital in the area. I believe it was early 2000s. They did not touch either one of these buildings. The roof is in bad condition. It covers about 19,600 square feet. Replacement cost would be about $11.95, but that includes gutters and taking out a skylight, patching the hole. And the warehouse, when they did the renovation in 2000, they tore off part of the warehouse, but they never sealed the wall. and we're getting water penetration into the warehouse.
Thank you. How many clients or patients are at Evansville State Hospital?
I believe it's 155.
160?
That's the max.
Okay, thank you.
I can get you an exact count.
Thank you.
Chairman Brown.
Question? Thank you. Item 8.
The last project I'm presenting is a building management system upgrade. This would be for Logansport and Richmond State Hospital. This would conclude our upgrades on the building management system, having a system-wide, so we do have some overview. We can review what the hospitals are doing. At both Richmond and Logansport, there's plastic tubing, thousands of feet running through walls. All this tubing is deteriorated and rotted, and it's basically either upgrade or try to replace all this plastic tubing.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Go ahead.
What's the payback from the cost savings? Is it around 7 years?
It's about $240,000 for the two facilities, and payback period's about 7 years.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Next, we have Mr. Kent, item 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Before I begin, I will say it's nice to talk to you guys face to face at one of these meetings as opposed to being lurking on the sides. So thank you for the opportunity.
We thought there might be, should I have a quiz for you since you're a former member?
If you want to begin the quiz, we can do that first. Department of Administration has two projects before you today. The first one is a $170,000 request for the restoration of the east side entrance to the Indiana State Library. That's the Senate Avenue entrance. This will become the main entryway for the Education Center that is in the State Library. If you recall, once the Education Center is completed, that'll be the main starting point of all the tours that come through the State House. Currently, there's some limestone pavers that are original construction from 1934 that have become deteriorated so bad that we can't replace them any further. So we're going to pull all those out and replace that with some stamped concrete that will have the consistency of the limestone look. So we'll have the same look that it does currently now. Also included in this, we'll do some electrical work. We'll also be replacing a concrete ADA ramp that's no longer usable. And then also we'll be giving just the whole plaza entryway a general facelift to bring it up to good standards. This work is going to be done at the same time that they're doing the Bicentennial Plaza work on Senate Avenue, so we can reduce the time that the sidewalk is closed for pedestrian traffic. Questions?
Any questions? Thank you.
Okay. The
Item
second is the annual release of R&R payments for facilities where IFA manages the long-term capital planning for those facilities. These facilities previously were bonded, and once the bonds were defeased, these R&R payments basically act as the mechanism to get them the payments to keep that capital planning going. So originally these R&R payments were part of the bonds, but since they're defeased, these payments have basically been pulled out of those amounts. The facilities include Government Center North and South, the Government Center parking garages, and the forensic lab. That's all from general fund. And then from post-war, we've got Rockville Correctional Facility and Pendleton Juvenile Correctional.
Any questions? You look like you have a question.
Yeah, I do. I'm just trying to figure out, this is basically, are we shifting money from one place to another? What? I'm not sure exactly what's going on with this.
The R&R dollars used to be included within a lease payment through IFA. Since those bonds have been defeased, we no longer have to pay the lease payment, but we still have to fund the R&R. These dollars are budgeted as part of the budget, and we're just releasing them to do the R&R now.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Brian.
Good answer. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving right along, item 11, Mr. Clark.
Good morning, Chairman Brown, members of the committee. I'm Cameron Clark with Department of Natural Resources. We have 5 items on the agenda today. The first is a request for $3,594,477 for State Parks General Rehab. This is an annual request we make to perform selective maintenance on our properties and various structures on our property. Last year, we requested amount of the appropriation that included some of the prior biennium's appropriation. This request, I believe, is for the balance of the appropriation. It will be used to perform or maintain 67 of our priority projects.
Any questions for Mr. Clark? Thank you. Item 12.
Our next item is a request for $1,219,084 for State Park cabin rehab. This is also an annual request that we make to perform maintenance and upkeep on our cabins and our group camp areas. This request will be used at 8 of our state parks that have cabins and group camps. I think the important point here is that the annual average cabin revenue at these 8 parks where this money is going to be used is almost equal to the amount of this request, so it's going to be about almost a 1-year payback on this investment.
Any questions? I think we talked last budget meeting. How's rentals at the state park and visitor counts?
We just tallied up some of the figures for the division recently. Our visitation is up about 2.5% over the prior year. What makes that significant, if you recall the late summer rains we had last year that closed down a couple of our properties due to flooding for quite a while. Nevertheless, our visitation was up anyway, which resulted in an increase of revenue to one of our highest levels, which is something what we're obviously very proud of.
Thank you. Item 13.
The next is a request for $406,364 for resource management. This is a request that usually is done in smaller increments, but we've decided to make this a larger request. This money is going to be divided up between our Division of Entomology and Plant Pathology and Division of Nature Preserves. Entomology and Plant Pathology is going to use less than half that money for invasive species control of the gypsy moth, kudzu, and the prevent the thousand cankers disease for walnut trees. This type of invasive species treatment is important to the state's economy because if these 3 invasives get out of control, they can wreak havoc in an economic standpoint. Black walnut is probably the most valuable hardwood species we have in the state. Thousand cankers is out west, and they're starting to see it in other states, and we want to make sure it doesn't take hold here in Indiana. That thousand cankers doesn't take hold here in Indiana. The gypsy moth acts as a defoliant, essentially, and kills trees. We have a problem with it in some of the northern sort of urban areas, and we treat without it. It can get out of control and defoliate certain cities and suburbs, which results in replacement costs for cities. And the kudzu, while not that prevalent in Indiana, we want to keep it down because it can spread very quickly. And it is a harbor, if you will, for a soybean disease, if you will, that if kudzu takes hold in forests near soybean fields, it could take out a soybean crop in the general area. The rest of it is going to be used by our Division of Nature Preserves for invasive species control on nature preserves, which is one of the requirements in the Nature Preserves Act in 1431-1. Sorry for the long explanation, but that's what that money's going for.
I got a question.
Go ahead, Representative
Thanks
Good.
for being here, Hammond. The gypsy moth, that was a real problem in southern Indiana, in my specific county. And now all the ash trees in our county are dying from the emerald ash borer in Scott County. And I just wanted to talk, in the past we've talked about, we know a lot of this spreads from people taking firewood to state parks from their areas of the country where they're from. And of course, Hardy Lake is right in Scott County, and that's obviously probably the origin of the gypsy moth there, and also the emerald ash borer. What kind of steps can we take that basically just says, hey, and I've seen the bumper stickers and all that, but what kind of steps legally can we take that just says, you are not allowed to bring firewood to our state from another state? Because they bring that unknowingly, and when they bring that, they bring those pests with them. And then when they leave the firewood that they don't burn, they throw it out in the woods.
Right.
And then the next thing you know, our state's infested with the same
Well,
bugs
from a
that-
legal standpoint, I don't know of anything that exists currently with regard to individual transportation of firewood. We try and prohibit people from bringing it into our state parks. We have firewood available there that we have either inspected, know the source, or prepared ourselves. On a larger scale, the feds, as well as our Division of Entomology and Plant Pathology, keep an eye on areas of the state that have certain invasives, and if necessary, limit inter-county movement or interstate movement, depending on what the invasive is. But on the scale that you're talking about, I'm not aware of anything legally that can be done.
Is there a statute that we can pass, or regulation that we can pass through maybe some kind of emergency statute that says that you are not allowed to transport firewood to state parks and state reservoirs in the state of Indiana? I mean, and the reason I'm really interested, as I said, because of Hardy Lake, and then all these species have been there, the gypsy moth and all that. Now, the gypsy moth has been eradicated because of a strong work by the DNR, and we say thank you for that. It took a couple of years to do that, but I think they're gone now. But this is a real issue, and if we can be proactive on our side to try to eliminate this somehow, then the money we're spending on this other side could be used for other things, obviously. And I know we're talking about personal rights and personal property issues, but through an emergency statute somehow we try to fix it.
Well, it might be easier and perhaps more palatable if we did it by administrative rule. Unfortunately, with regard to the emerald ash borer, it's probably too little too late.
Right.
It's, for the most part, made its way north to south through the state. There are pockets where we're seeing, I don't know whether it's resistance or whatever the case is, we're seeing some pockets where the ash isn't as impacted. But I know in Marion County, where I live, it's made its way through since I've been there, and I've lost some ash trees in my yard, and actually was able to save one. But you know, the chemicals you put down aren't cheap, and certainly that's no way to deal with it on a large scale.
If we could, maybe we can have further dialogue. We'll stop now, but maybe we can have further dialogue with that and try to figure out a way to, if not eliminate, try to figure a way to slow that transport of firewood and those things.
Sure, happy to continue the conversation.
So is there policy as people come into state parks to stay overnight? Are they asked about whether they're carrying firewood, or do they have the right to inspect some of it? Or
Well, we don't stop and search vehicles coming in. It's more of an ask. If we happen to notice, we can go and take a look and see what kind of wood it is, and at which point we can ask where it come from, and at that point we can ask that it not be used, and then get rid of it right away and replace it with wood that we have there. But we aren't going to those extremes that you mentioned.
any further question or comment? Thank you. Item 14?
Item 14 is a request for $400,000 to purchase an algae wheel plant that currently exists at Summit Lake. This is a very good story to tell, and I'll try and be brief. But we were approached by a company about 2 years ago to provide a test site for an algae wheel plant that conducts wastewater treatment. And this company set this up on one of our properties, Summit Lake State Park, to bring in potential customers to see how it works. And part of the agreement was at the end of the term of the contract, they would offer the system to us for purchase. And that's where we are today. I will tell you that we have an aging wastewater treatment plant there that is in need of repair, as well as there are some code issues that need to be addressed that would cost more than today's request for a facility that, if we were to buy brand new, would cost well over $1 million. So this is something that's worked out well, in our opinion, for us and for the citizens, based upon the amount of money involved, should we go a different route.
Any questions? Item 14. Thank you. Item 15.
Finally, this is an item that involves federal funds, not state funds, but for transparency reasons, we all felt it was best to put it on the agenda. This is phase 2 of a project at our Redbird State Recreation Area, where we requested a certain sum of money for phase 1 to upgrade some railroad crossings along a county road that is used by our guests going from one side of the railroad to the other on our properties. The railroad worked with us and provided us the right-of-way, but in return asked us to put up guardrails along a portion of the rail right-of-way to prevent our guests from crossing the railroad tracks at a unauthorized spot. And we have procured a federal grant to pay for this. This doesn't involve state funds, but again, we've got it on the agenda just so you know what we're planning.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go to item 16. Jody Melton. Kankakee River Basin.
Good morning. I want to acknowledge my chairman, Chris Knackle, and vice chairman, Ken Purrs, are both here with me. This is a request for $395,000. It's the last of the appropriation. We don't ask for our money until we're ready to spend it. This is ongoing maintenance on the Kankakee and the yellow, and the nature of the Kankakee is sometimes we get bogged down with Corps of Engineer permits. The project in Porter County took a little bit of doing, so we have the permits, and all of these are ready to go. So that's... Any questions?
Any questions? For Senator Talley.
Hi, Jody. Just wanted to ask you and bring to the board's attention that part of the Kankakee River has just received. You want to talk about that? Yeah.
In June, there was a national press release. The Department of the Interior declared the Kankakee River a national water trail. As I understand it, there's only 20 in the nation. It doesn't put in more regulations, or it doesn't. We talked to Farm Bureau before we asked for this designation. It's just sort of an honor. We're going to be able to put up some signs. The county tourism bureaus are kind of excited because it may bring in a little bit more tourism, and we're going to work that angle the best we can. The River Basin Commission's talking about, well, actually, we're working to get signs and mileage signs up on the river so that the canoers and the boaters will know where they are. It has happened where somebody's fallen in or somebody needs help, but they don't exactly know where they are. If we can help get that done through the counties, through the county surveyors, through the county highway departments, and probably the River Basin Commission, that'll be a big help. But anyway, we were real pleased that we are a national water trail now with that designation.
And just to follow up on that, so now that we've got this federal designation, are there any federal monies that might be available for grants to do any of this stuff?
We're trying to find out.
Okay.
They tell us maybe for tourism advertising, to bring tourism dollars in for tourism, perhaps. As far as the work that we do, not necessarily.
Okay.
And I should thank the legislature too, because the work we do, we have to keep the river flowing for the drainage for the farm fields. And to keep the river flowing, we got to keep the junk out of the river, and that helps the canoers as well, because they have a lot of trouble getting around that debris. So that's been very helpful. So you all have helped us with that too.
Any further comments? Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I lost my place. Yeah. 17, School for the Blind, Mr. Brown.
Good morning. I make a presentation for School for the Blind and School for the Deaf. The first one that we have up is security cameras, and this would cover the exterior of the Indiana School for the Blind. It would be approximately 100 cameras, and that would include all conduit, hardwiring, fiber, licenses, and software. And this would cover approximately 67 acres around all of our perimeter buildings.
Questions? Thank you. 18.
The activity building roof at the School for the Blind, by all accounts, with our records, is original to construction, which is 1974. It has suffered significant damage over the last few years between storms and just degradation from UV and the age of the roof. And we are seeking approval to replace that.
Any questions?
Okay, for Indiana School for the Deaf, we're requesting funding for 6 air conditioning units that sit on top of the building on the north end. Those are at least 40 years old by our records. We've had several mechanical failures and made several emergency repairs over the years. And as a matter of fact, we just lost another unit last week and have one that is leaking. And this area of the school is vocational teaching for our kids. And they come back August 22nd. We'll have everything up and running by then. But these are in bad need of replacement.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 20, Department of Transportation, Mr. McAvoy.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Our first project we wish to present this morning is the construction of the New Haven Unit Building. The project is estimated at $2.7 million. The existing New Haven Unit Building was built in 1966, 50-year-old building, 3,162 square feet, has numerous safety, environmental, and operational issues, some of which include the garage size does not allow for OSHA-approved workspaces. The building is not compliant with American with Disabilities Act. The existing unit does not have a contained wash bay. They wash their trucks outside. Therefore, all the stormwater runoff leaves our property. We definitely need to take care of that problem. The single garage bay is not large enough to service a fully dressed salt truck. Operational issues may lead to public safety issues, as the extended time to repair our trucks will lengthen our service time during a snow fight. Further environmental impacts of not containing our wash water could lead to future costs associated with site cleanup and water quality. The new building we're proposing will be 5,690 square feet and will address all of these issues. The new building will be built on the existing site, and the existing building will be utilized for equipment storage. Our estimate of $2.7 million equates to about $202 a square foot, which is only about 4.6% higher than our current average of all of our past 5-year unit building construction of about $193 a square foot. Any questions?
Go ahead, Senator Tanya.
Yeah, just saying, this looks like a lot of money for a 5,000 square foot garage. Why are and I assume that you don't have interior finishes and all that kind of stuff. Why is the construction cost so high on this kind of facility?
It's a 50-year building, so it's brick facade, masonry construction, concrete floors inside, nothing extravagant. Has a break room, locker rooms, handicap restrooms, and 3 garage bays. So it has 2 garage bays that are deep enough for us to be able to service our trucks, and then it has a fully contained wash bay with catwalk system and underbody wash And at $202 a square foot, you know, that's really pretty good for industry standard. I mean, a lot of construction we're seeing is over $250 a square foot. We do utilize, the same type of design when we build new units. We don't, build have new designs for each one we do. So we try to keep our costs down. Unfortunately, the costs do escalate some per year. But we feel like it's well in line with industry standard. So, any other questions? The next project we have is the architectural and engineering fees for the construction of the Logansport unit. This is a $204,000 request. This existing building is exactly identical to New Haven. It's the single garage bay, tin can type of building that we have. Therefore, it has all the same problems that New Haven has and the buildings of this era, the 50-year-old buildings. No stormwater runoff control, no wash bay. They wash trucks outside. Again, that's a serious concern for us, is we do not want any contaminants leaving our site. So when we build these new units, it's fully contained. We recycle the wash water and we make brine with our wash water, so we don't have to use city water. The new building will be built on the existing site, and the existing building will be demolished. Again, it's just part of our standard plan. Any questions about that?
Any questions? Do we still have a lot of these single bay buildings out there?
We do. I knew you were going to ask me that question. Our long-range plan, we have about 119 units statewide, and we've done really well over the last 15 years of knocking them off. We've had some other large projects like sub-districts that have taken a lot of our budget, our annual budget, but we're getting to the point now where, with the current funding that we have, we can attack some of these smaller projects. And to me, this is a smaller building. We've got about 50 left that are between 50 years and 35 years. So, and again, equivalent salt buildings. So 40 to 45 salt buildings. So at current funding levels, we're looking at about 15 to 16 years to get through the program.
Okay.
So hopefully we can do it faster than that. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Have to have a revenue source to do that. Item 22, Ms. Hoy. Pleasure to see you. When does the fair open?
A week from today.
All right.
So we're a little busy, but thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, to be here with you today. We are celebrating Indiana's bicentennial, and this year's fair is the 160th Great Indiana State Fair, so we're very excited about it. Anecdotally, Representative Gooden, let me just tell you that the Indiana State Fairgrounds has also experienced ashbourne issues. We have lost over 200 mature trees on the fairgrounds. Now we're on a replanting program, also working with Keep Indianapolis Beautiful and Lily Day of Service to replant those trees, but it's been devastating to us as well.
Question with that. And as we move forward, I don't know the DNR here as well, but is there something, I mean, we know that this is going to happen, and we know that Indiana is rich in resources of ash species, and of course that's the reason why a lot of the industry was located in southern Indiana with making garden utensils and all that for the handles and so forth. But is there an opportunity for DNR to put out a informational that if you've got ash trees on your farm, if you're not going to treat them, you should probably harvest them, because if you don't, they're going to be dead in 3 years and they're not going to be worth anything. So that might be an opportunity with the state fair. If you've got any more ash trees, you should probably go ahead and harvest them if it's not already been done, because that's a real issue as we move forward. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Great advice. Thank you. So anyway, let me just thank you again. You released $2 million last year in R&R funds for the State Fair Commission, and I'm here again to ask you for R&R funds for going forward for $2 million. But let me give you a little history. You may recall, in June of 2012, I came before this committee seeking the approval of financing for the renovation of the crown jewel of the Indiana State Fairgrounds, the Indiana Farmers Coliseum. The financing for the Coliseum was predicated on the premise that the state funding for the State Fair Commission will remain constant at the 2012 level. Since 2013, the State Fair Commission has been experiencing a decrease in payments from the gaming admission tax, We've been able to absorb 1.234 million in shortfalls. However, we have depleted our reserves. And so we are asking today that you approve the release of $2 million and allow us to put $1.8 million towards the lease payments for the IFA for debt service on the Coliseum to bridge that shortfall for the fiscal year 16-17. The remaining $200,000 will go to R&R, HVAC issues, and some masonry. We've been working with the state budget agency and Director Bailey on a long-term solution to implement for the 2018-19 biennium budget. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Senator Kenley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Cindy. So you're working for toward a budget presentation to resolve this issue, and how much longer do we have on the bond? So how do you know how long the bond is supposed to last?
Yes. So there's one stopgap, which is in 2017. We were challenged to raise $10 million for an early call on that bond.
Okay.
We've raised the $10 million, and so we'll be able to do the early call in 2017. That will reduce by approximately $250,000, $300,000 a year in debt service.
Okay.
It goes till 2039.
Okay. So we need a fairly long-term solution here.
Correct.
Okay. Thank
Any further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, turning to the plethora of university projects, Mr. Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Tony Hahn with Purdue University. Good to be with you this morning. I have only one project for your consideration today, a controlled environment phenotyping facility. Now, this project would construct a world-class, in fact, only kind in the world, controlled environment plant imaging facility of about 7,300 square feet. And this facility will have 2 growth chambers of 288 pots each, which means we could grow full-size corn, soybeans, grains, tomatoes, move them along conveyances through high-tech sensors and photography to examine the phenotype and the physical characteristics of the plants. It'll be located on the West Lafayette campus. It includes the demolition of an existing greenhouse. It was built in 1951, so it served its useful life. Plant science is one of our important initiatives under Purdue Moves, and this supports our plant phenotyping effort, our crop development, and our fundamental plant research that we do so well. And it has a lot of cross-disciplinary opportunities with R&D about sensors and experimental design, statistical analysis of the plant phenotype. Estimated total cost of the project is $6.25 million, and that will be funded from an internal fund of non-public money that was created at the end of FY14 from F&A, which I've discussed before, facilities and administrative, which are those indirect costs that we recover for grants, as well as interest income. And this was a fund created to support the Purdue Moves initiatives and is spent at the discretion of the president. Current balance of that fund is $14.5 million, and the facility total of 6.25, but 3.1 million of that is the fixed equipment inside. So we've included the high-tech sensors and the conveyors in the total cost. So that's what makes the building on a square foot basis look high. Any questions about our phenotyping facility?
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. That takes care of the project. We now move to the review items. First review item is reserve presentation. Director Bailey.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman Brown.
Right.
As a result of legislation that was passed by strong bipartisan majorities this most recent session in 10/01/2016, the excess reserve calculation has a few changes to it for this year. One is the reserve amount is reduced from 12.5% to 11.5%. Another change is that we include the tuition reserve account in our calculation of total reserves. As you know, this past week, we did the formal announcement of closeout, and the closeout reserves for fiscal 16 are $2.245 billion. If you do the 11.5% calculation, we apply that 11.5% to total appropriations in 17. So that's going to include even planned reversions from the Stadium and Convention Center lease payments. So we include all of those dollars in that total appropriation number. So we take that number, we multiply it by 11.5%, and we come up with $1.817 billion. So we take that $2.245 billion, we subtract the $1.817 billion, and we came up with $428 million for the excess reserve distribution. Statute requires OMB to have made that calculation by July 31. Then it requires review by Budget Committee, and if Budget Committee reviews that and it goes on the agenda, then those dollars become available for NDOT and local governments to use in strengthening and maintaining Indiana's roads and bridges. So as a part of that law, that excess reserve amount, that $428 million, as you recall, 55% will go to NDOT and the State Highway Fund, and then the 45% remaining will go into the local road and bridge matching grant fund.
Questions for Director Bailey? Go ahead, Senator Ty.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get some things like straight in my mind here. So I've got, can you explain a little bit more about the rainy day fund transfer and how you came up with the numbers?
Sure. Good question. We have a rainy day fund statute that requires us to take data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis on Indiana personal income growth. It's a formula that you get a percentage of income growth and you subtract 2% from that. The remainder is what you have to transfer. Use that as in your calculation to transfer from the unobligated general fund balance to the rainy day fund. And for this year, we were required by statute to transfer $166 million from the unobligated general fund balance to the rainy day fund. We still count it as part of our reserves, of course, but it's in that rainy day fund account specifically now.
All right, so explain this to me. You do this based on a percentage of personal income growth, right?
That's correct.
And where do these numbers come from?
These come from the Federal Bureau of Economic Analysis.
And what is that based on?
It's based on their calculation of personal income growth in Indiana.
All right.
Which they track by quarter.
And the reason that I'm questioning this is because everywhere that I'm reading, we look at, okay, we're supposed to be in this national economic recovery, but Indiana is, according to everything I read, and this is not a political statement, I'm just trying to figure it out, Indiana is relatively low down. We're losing money in comparison with the national median income. So how do we get a personal income growth when everything else shows that our income is actually declining? How do we come up with that?
Again, these are data points from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. They supply us these numbers, and state statute requires us to use that data in our computation. I don't think they make a relativistic comparison from how Indiana's doing to the rest of the country. They're just looking at personal income growth in Indiana.
Okay, and then all right. So why do we use personal income growth as opposed to like state revenue growth? I mean, why do we use this calculation to determine how we're moving money around?
Well, I don't want to speak for the prior General Assembly that produced this statute, but my understanding of it is they wanted personal income growth to be a proxy for economic conditions. And as economic conditions have improved, you are putting money away in the rainy day fund or the countercyclical stabilization fund, so that if personal income growth levels off in a recession or decreases in a recession, you have those dollars available for appropriations in a later budget.
And has this always been the mark? Has this always been the benchmark for what we use to determine that transfer?
I haven't seen a change in that statute relative to the data that we use for the calculation in some time. I think it's been there for a while now.
Yeah.
The two old men over here are thinking that it probably came from the 90s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. So it's something that we've always done, not necessarily something we've recently done. All right, and I want to ask another question about this. From what I see here on this closeout, our revenue projections are down 0.7%. Is that right? From
estimate.
From
Collections
estimate?
were down from estimate.
And so the projection had been like 2.8. Now we're down to,
We had, from the most recent forecast in December 15, we were 111 million below what total collections were forecasted to be for fiscal 16.
all right. So what do we need to make up for next year now that we're down? Now that we're down this much.
If we were to achieve the revenue that was forecasted for 17,
right,
based on what collections were in 16, we would need to grow 3.5%.
So what's that going to mean for next year's budget, or for the 2017 budget?
Well, just as we've done the past few years, we keep a pretty close eye on monthly revenue collections. As we entered fiscal 17, we asked state agencies, again with some exceptions, to hold a 3% reserve, and we'll continue to monitor revenue collections and spending accordingly.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you bring up the point that we're all watching this very closely, and I've asked the statement, are we in a 2% kind of quandary, or are we in a 2% robust economy?
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I asked why we're transferring, and what's the number, 160 million, to the rainy day fund when we're below our revenue projections, and it doesn't really look like what we're doing with the rainy day fund has anything to do with the reality of where we are with revenue.
We're still structurally in a surplus, ongoing revenue, ongoing expenditures.
Right.
So we haven't triggered, whether we need to use rainy day for any of our operational costs. And so.
No, I get that.
And so I think the rainy day
I'm
fund.
talking about why we're moving money to the savings account when we are way below our revenue projections.
Well, I think the fear would be, could we have 300 million or 500 million, if we have a minor recession, then we would be prepared to take that dip out of the economic road. Director Bailey, is that?
I would make just one comment to Senator Tallian's point. You may want to look at whether that statutory formula should continue
exactly
in this upcoming session.
That was sort of where I was going. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for Director Senator Kenley?
That's a lot of money that we're shoving over to roads and transportation, and I can't quite remember what the time frame for the requirement for usage is, but we all, in this other bill that we had in the session, we had kind of this found money that we sent back to the locals, and they're having a hard time figuring out how to come up with ways to make matches to spend all that. what is the time frame on the utilization of this other 400 million, 55% to NDOT and 45% to locals? Is it just go into their pot and then they're supposed to try and deal with the problems we've been talking about on some kind of a schedule, or do we know how that's going to work?
My understanding from NDOT is they have the application process available for the locals
Right.
to now apply for those funds.
Right.
And there's no, as far as I understand, there's no deadline on the use of
Okay.
those funds.
So we could go into next year's budget discussions with money still sitting in those accounts for the match. I mean, not only did they get a pretty big one-time shot of their own money sent to them early, but we
430 million.
we actually appropriate other money, and then this supplements that, right?
That's correct.
So that puts them in a pretty big number. So we shouldn't be having any near-term troubles, but I think it might present a discussion point for the next budget as we make our major overall road plan and put it together. And then does NDOT, their 55% share, is it already designated for certain types of uses, or do you know? Maybe it's not a fair question for you.
I'm looking at Jim, but I don't want to speak for NDOT, but my understanding is they had a list of projects and they had a list of known need for the next few fiscal years, I mean,
Yeah.
really on out to through the next decade.
Sure.
And so I know they know their
But even in that
priorities for
case,
spending.
even in that case, in both situations, whatever real or perceived road difficulties we have, we're already building money ahead that can help go toward the plans that we're trying to design.
That's right.
Okay.
Any further questions, Director Bailey? Comments? Thank you. We go to Gary Roosevelt Grant. Courtney?
Hello, and thank you for having me here today. I'm Commissioner Courtney Scopsma with the Department of Local Government Finance, but I'm here today representing the Distress Unit Appeals Board. I also have with me Jack Martin, who is the financial specialist that DUAB is working with for Gary Community School Corporation, and then also his colleague Mark Schrupp is here as well. House Enrolled Act 1179 from this past year allowed for the financial specialist to request a grant from DUAB of up to $500,000 in order to ensure that certain capital improvements are made to a building in order to maintain it for instructional use. And then that grant must also be reviewed by the State Budget Committee, which is why we are here today. The financial specialist did come before the DUAB on May 20th to request this grant. The project that they have identified at this point is for Roosevelt High School, and it involves updating their heating system. It is a hot water heating system that they currently have, and so the preliminary plans at this point include replacing boiler pumps and heating coils, installing wireless thermometers, as well as flushing and replacing the various pipes that are transporting the hot water throughout the school. The anticipated impact of these updates would be to extend the life of their heating system by 5 to 8 years. Based on this information, DUAB did approve this grant. We also did include some additional requirements that they report back to us monthly on the expenditure of this grant, as well as developing and implementing a long-term maintenance plan so that we can ensure that that extension on the life actually does occur. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions on the grant, as well as we have Jack here if you have questions for him.
Oh, my goodness. Certainly glad we're not in Ways and Means, right, Lisa?
Hey, we should start there.
If you don't know, there's a penalty for cell phones going off in Ways and Means room. So. Volunteer penalty. Thank you. Now you've lost my train of thought. Senator Kenley.
Can I ask a question?
Senator Kenley and then Representative.
Yeah, Courtney, thank you for being here. This whole exercise, we're kind of is premised on the fact that we, in our past legislative actions and kind of giving this work to the DUAB, want to strengthen the public school system in Gary, Indiana. And they're financially in very bad shape. And so this relatively small amount of money is, I think, intended as a gesture of good faith on the state's part to just try and step in and help a little bit here and there. It took quite a bit of effort to get the local school board up there, and appreciate the mayor's willingness to sit down in discussions and share her concerns and desires for the system to improve dramatically up there. And all of these things have to be done in the basis of a solid financial footing. And the Gary Public Schools receive, on a per pupil basis, one of the largest amounts of revenue that we give to any school system in the state. And then they have a property tax system which is working or not working. And the reason for all of this exercise and having the expert be sent up there and all these things is to try to get all of this squared away so that Gary can be a better community, because a good community is premised on a good school system. And we think that it's we think we need to move past the point of pointing fingers in the past as to who's at fault. But I think that there is a pretty substantial amount of revenue and funds available to the corporation. And I think the first step in this is establishing some kind of a strong financial discipline and a more appropriate utilization of the funds. And that means some hard decisions about how many buildings you keep open and what you do with them, and how you structure everything that you do and every expense that you have. And I'm not sensing that we're moving very fast on that track. And so I would encourage the DUAB to continue to work on these things with them, because we're going to have to put together a school funding budget next year, and we're probably going to have to take a look at this issue individually. I think the situation that we have there is a far cry from the situation in Detroit, Michigan, where they expect hundreds of millions of dollars from state government to straighten out the Detroit school system. And I don't think that's a very reasonable or very likely prospect in this case. And so to the extent that people have that kind of expectation, I think we're on the wrong track. And so I'm going to vote yes to approve the agenda and approve this as an item on the agenda. But I hope people will understand that I'm doing this out of an effort to show some good faith, but really have a hugely greater expectations of the performance and the speed of performance up there by the local folks in terms of how they deal with these issues. And this is a very difficult situation, and I don't know that I'd call it a crisis, but I'm not seeing the type of movement forward on their part or on this exercise's part that shows that they're doing all that much to solve the problem. In fact, I'm actually seeing and hearing from the media up there discussions about how they need to bail us out like they did Detroit. And I don't think that's what's going on here. I don't think it's necessary. And I think Indiana's been very diligent about sending extra funds to corporations that have higher complexity type problems. But we've got a lot of financial problems to solve here, and I want to lay the marker out there that my expectation is that we need to be much more aggressive and do better with the funds and the resources that we have. So, that's just, you're one of the messengers in this operation. You're not the principal decision maker, but I just had to I think it's important that I share those thoughts as to why we established the bill in the first place and where we think we're going. And we had some very good meetings with the Gary School Board and with the mayor and other people that are really concerned. And I think we all share a common concern here, but we're getting a little divergent on how we think the problem's going to be solved.
Representative Gooden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I somewhat agree with Senator Kinley. Sorry, I started to give you a promotion there, Luke. But I somewhat agree with what he's saying. I mean, I don't think people should just come to the legislature and say, hey, we need a bailout. That just does not work. It's never worked, and it don't work. But, as we move forward, we need to talk about other types of schools as well, and rural schools that service large areas of land where kids ride buses for 35 and 40 minutes, and to close those schools, to send them somewhere else would be very impractical. And those schools aren't getting the funding they need to be able to operate. But you know what this all really boils down to is we continue to fund a 20th century school model that is out of date. And until we decide to start moving forward to the 21st century in our school structures and our school models, instead of throwing more money to a model that's, like I said, was created in the 1900s, we're going to continue to struggle. And it's going to be, we've bailed out, I was completely opposed to bailing out the charter schools, completely opposed to bailing out any other schools. But why do we continue to throw bad or good money after bad instead of actually getting down to the root of the problem? And the root of the problem is the structure of our schools as they stand. The K through 12 structure is an outdated model, and we've got to move beyond that. And as a school superintendent, I'm telling you, it's broken. Let's fix it. And I've preached this for a couple of years now, and I can't get anybody to understand that it's broken, and that's why we're having the problems. And to continue to perpetuate giving more money to charter schools or other schools that the General Assembly says that our schools aren't doing well, but then we perpetuate the problem by just giving more money to entities who create identical duplicates of the public schools they say are failing. And it doesn't make sense. So I know you're the messenger, but this has created a good opportunity to have a real discussion about where we need to go in education. And where we're going right now is wrong. It's just wrong. It's in the wrong direction. We're duplicating services in a lot of areas, and we've got to fix it. And we're going to continue to have this. This is just the first discussion of school corporations that are going to come here asking for bailouts, because there's school corporations all over the state of Indiana now that are to the point where they can't cut any more fat, they can't cut any more whatever. They're there, and they've been there, and what's going to happen is the state of Indiana is going to struggle because we're not going to be able to produce the children we need to be able to participate and even more particular compete in the 21st century world that we're in. So thank you for bringing it to your attention. Sorry, when you walk back, you can pull the arrows out of you, like the old Daffy Duck cartoon, But thank you, and what you're talking about is important. But I'm like Luke. I'm sorry, Senator Kinley. This is not the answer, and I just cringe at the millions of dollars that we're spending, and just we're just throwing good money after bad. So let's fix it, guys and gals. Thank you,
Senator Talley.
My comment's going to be a lot easier. Normally, and I'm just saying, normally when you come, we get some kind of piece of paper telling us what it is you're doing. I don't even know. Did I miss it? How much is this grant for? I mean, we don't. I don't feel like I got information.
All right, they do have some information that they can provide to you.
So okay.
We'll pass that out. The grant itself is up to $500,000, which is what was authorized in statute. That's also what DUAB did approve, was up to $500,000.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Senator Michelin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I spent a day up in Gary and I went over the books with Mr. Martin. And first, I just want to compliment Mr. Martin with the job he's done. Their payroll alone at Gary was more than their entire revenue that they have to spend. So I know I don't want to see bailouts and stuff either like you, but I do want to compliment Mr. Martin because he was dealt a pretty tough hand here, and I think he's handled it well, and I think he's getting them on the right track. But there's so much baggage that it's really hard to even get back to zero. So I just want to compliment Mr. Martin on the job he is doing up there. So
This is what we needed.
Thank you. I think Chairman's prerogative, maybe I get to go last. Thank you. That maybe you could share with the Budget Committee members, especially the legislators, the public minutes from the DUAB board about this situation, because I think there's been a lot of progress, as Senator Mishler has said, and a lot of people are thinking, well, where do we stand? What is the plan? And yet there are plans in place. There are recommendations in place that have come before the DUAB board that, you know, a lot of people haven't heard about. And I think it would be very informative if a few more people had that information readily available. I think Representative Gooden, I agree with you. We created an education system based on, and we're here in car-making capital, the industrialization, as Henry Ford put a Model T down the track. We put kids down the track, we put them in a room, and they moved down the track every year after year. I call it the industrialization, which made efficiency of education during the 50s. So do we go to multi-age classrooms where we have more than one grade in a classroom? Do we not promote children just because they had a birthday, but they mastered the skills? And how do we then fund that? I mean, is there some accountability to the system when, you know, you can't read by third grade? You got to keep that kid at that level to get them to reading, and who's responsible for making that happen? We know that, you know, elementary ed is a lot easier to pay for than high school. High school is much more expensive. So I welcome, you know, the dialogue that we can make that happen, because we need to think outside the box. I agree wholeheartedly with you. We need to de-industrialize education and make it fit for the community of interest.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. And as we start that conversation, we must remember that you cannot gauge success with a test score. And there's a much bigger spectrum there than just the test score. So yes, thank you. You're right. All of those things you talked about, and we can do that respectfully, and we can also do that in the right cognitive way that it doesn't have a social or emotional impact on those individuals that are going through that. So yes, thank you, and I look forward to the conversation. Believe me.
And then just lastly, with your comment, you're going to have a maintenance plan as part of this grant process. Do you anticipate that will be that maintenance plan will be shortly forthcoming within the next 30 to 60 days, or do you, I mean, if we give a grant and they don't have a maintenance plan, I'm a little concerned.
Okay.
Do you think they'll have a maintenance plan for how to keep this boiler system working?
Probably no later than 30, 45 days, I think. The school board voted to retain a professional engineering firm, and they're really working on that as we speak.
Okay, because I appreciate it. I understand, because a lot of boilers in the other buildings are kind of in the same predicament, not having the yearly maintenance that needed to keep their life function up to par.
Yes, sir, and this grant is just for Roosevelt School.
I understand.
But it will provide some general fund relief for the other schools that for their capital needs.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Yeah.
Representative Klinker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to go along with that, our rural schools, according to Dr. Gooden, he's absolutely right, in all areas of Indiana are struggling, and they are the only schools that many of our farm children can go to, and he's right about an hour on the school bus, 45 minutes to an hour. I think we also need to discuss, along with that, keeping our teachers in the classroom. I notice so many of our young people stay maybe 3 years, and then they leave the classroom due to finances. They can't make it. So hopefully, as we're talking about restructuring and helping maintenance, which is very necessary, I hope we talk about some type of initiative to keep teachers in the classroom, along
Okay.
with, of course, discussing testing.
We're getting a little far field, Sheila, because we're talking about a grant to Gary Roosevelt, so
But I think with the grants, we need to discuss other issues that are connected to education, too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Kentley.
Yep. Mr. Martin, do you have a sense that you've got a capital needs analysis here on that situation, but what about the bigger picture of the state revenues, the local revenues, and the federal revenues? Do you feel like you're making any progress or have any goal in mind, or is there any light at the end of the tunnel that figure out how to make Gary live on the revenues that they have?
Gary is, in my view, sort of a desperate situation. They, for several years, have not received adequate revenue to cover labor costs. Payroll.
Now, wait a second. You said that they have not received adequate revenue to cover revenue costs. I know you're probably saying that in a neutral sense.
Yes.
But I would say it that they have not made their labor costs fit within the revenues that they receive. Is that a fair
Yes, sir,
statement?
and I would agree with that statement.
Okay.
And that's where what I've said to them and said to others is that there is a need to significantly reduce labor costs. And that's the 300-pound gorilla in the room.
Okay.
Thank you. And again, Courtney, I think if past DUAB minutes related to what, because I know Gary School Corporation has been before the DUAB board for the last year, maybe it'd be helpful if the rest of the committee members didn't have those minutes to look at past minutes and reports. It'd be very helpful. Thank you. Next, we'll go on to item 3, the Unemployment Insurance Fund. Mr. Note. Bill? And this is kind of follow-up into the discussion if committee remembers last year about this time. We talked about paying off the federal government loan early and what that would do. We wanted to make sure that the fund continued to stay in the black for unemployment benefits going forward.
Yes. Good morning, Chairman Brown, ladies and gentlemen of the Budget Committee. On behalf of Commissioner Braun, we appreciate the opportunity today to give you a brief update on the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. My name is Bill Nanti. I am the CFO and the Chief of Staff at the Department of Workforce Development. Also have with me today our Chief Operating Officer, Josh Richardson, who used to be our Director of Unemployment Insurance. Also have Jeff Gill, our General Counsel, who is very well versed on the unemployment insurance program and is here just in case we get in any trouble. So hopefully that won't be the case. What we thought we would do today is just give a few brief stats on unemployment as it exists today. As Chairman Brown was talking about, the last time we met was back in October. And a lot has happened since then, and we're going to go over just a real quick timeline, and then we'll update you on the actual trust fund account number, and then, of course, open it up to any questions. So at this time, I'd like to have Josh Richardson give some updates on stats and the timeline.
Thank you, and good to be here. We do have a quick presentation for you today, if we can move through it. The first is just a slide of the unemployment rate picture across the country. Indiana's rate, June, stood at 4.8%, just below national rate there. As it gets more into relating to unemployment claims, you can see here the trend that we've been on and sort of how our agency has changed and how our operations have changed over the last few years. These are initial unemployment claims by week. This chart goes back to 2008, so when you look at the right-hand side of this graph, you can see those levels spike in 2008, and then move into 2009 where it moves down, you can see that we are trending at or below lowest levels, at least over this time period, but frankly it goes back much earlier than that, continuing to see incredibly low initial claims numbers, lower than 4,000 people filing for unemployment claims per week in Indiana. How that translates to continued claims, the number of people who actually receive compensation for a week of insured unemployment has also continued to drop as time goes on. Those of you who haven't seen this chart a number of times in the past will see that through those winter months, it's very typical to see a spike as construction workers come onto the unemployment system for a number of months in the winter. Typically rounds out. That is, one of the questions that we look at going forward, and as we do these projections, one of the things that's difficult is knowing, will winter come earlier? Will you get a hard freeze that will start these layoffs earlier? Makes projecting these a little bit more difficult. But really, I think part of what we're here today to update you on is some of the work that we all really did together last year around this time, and that was working to get Indiana out from under borrowing from the federal government, from the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund at the federal level, borrowing in advance. And so through a series of steps that we took, represented by a couple of bullet points, but with a whole lot more effort backing them, last year, with this committee's approval, we moved about $250 million from the state's general fund temporarily to the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. That allowed us to avoid paying food to credit penalty, Indiana employers paying food to credit penalty, $327 million, and also because we hit our January 1st target, take us out from underneath that specter of potentially paying them again with borrowing here in the near future. We did that with the understanding that the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund would repay that advance of money back. We were able to do that. That process has gone smoothly. And so now we've been made whole. The $327 million has been avoided. And so that went well. And as we got on here, obviously a successful running there, the 500 as well. So I'll be around here for questions. I think I'm going to let Bill, who's put this chart together, go ahead and pull it up. Just at a high level there, though, I think, obviously, hopefully on the right trajectory. And Bill, you can take this one away. Okay.
Thank you, Josh. In regards to the UI Trust Fund projection, I think if I could call your attention initially to the very far right portion of this table, and you'll see the A's and the EST, and I just want to emphasize the first 8 years on this table are actual numbers of premiums received, benefits paid, what the surplus or deficit might have been, and then, of course, the food credit penalty that Josh was mentioning before. As we all know, we went through some pretty rough times in the 2009, 2010, and, of course, we peaked in 2011 there at over $2 billion in what was owed to the federal government. Through working together, as Josh had said, it looks like we're on the right trajectory, and with the help of the $250 million loan that we got in last October, we finished 2015 at about a $26 million to the good, to the positive. We knew our big premiums would be received in April, late April and early May, and those did come in as expected. I think we paid the balance back. In fact, I know it was on May 18th that we made the transfer of the $250 million, and we are projecting that with the $250 that we paid back, with all the other premiums, with the benefits that we will be paid by the end of the year, we think we'll be in the somewhere around the $85 to $90 million range as far as to the positive in the trust fund. And what we did on this, we made a couple of assumptions. I wish we had a crystal ball. I wish we could see exactly what was going to happen in the future. Obviously, we don't. We tried to be a little bit conservative here, and as Josh's charts were showing, we're really at a low as far as benefits being paid out these days. Claims are down, benefit payments are down. We compared the first 6 months of this year to the first 6 months of last year, and premium-wise, we're down about 5%. Benefits paid-wise, we're down about 6.5%. So given that benefits are so low at this point, we chose just to keep the benefits paid at the same exact amount, subject to adjustment in the future, just from a conservative standpoint. On the premiums we received, we did go ahead and reduce those by our comparison from this year to last year, so those are going down 5%. Even with those conservative assumptions, we still feel that projecting out to the end of 2019, we'd be at about $838 million as a surplus in the trust fund. Obviously, there's a lot that can happen between now and then, but that is our projections. We'll change these as data becomes available that would lead us to believe we need to make a change. But this is what we feel at this point, and certainly I'm open to any questions about the trust fund.
Senator Talley.
Thank you. And excuse me for doing this, but you know, there was a time that we had for a couple of years a special committee to just review the unemployment trust fund issues, and that was sort of disbanded and given to the budget committee. So if you don't mind, I have a couple of questions about this. Couple of things. You showed here the number of claims, number of new claims, but a lot of times what happens with the UI fund is that it's not just the number of new claims, but it's the length of time that we're paying the claims. Do you have a feel for the average length of claim?
And Josh, I might have Josh come up and answer that.
So yes, and in fact, I think, you know, as we go through this process, Senator Italian, of trying to figure out what's helpful, obviously, to you individually or to the committee as a whole, we can work on that. There is a calculation. It's the average duration.
Yeah.
We calculate it frequently. It's the basically, though, it's the number of continued claims divided by the number of initial claims, and then they lag it. It's a federal metric. But that number is at about, I think, 13.8 weeks now. That number trended down for a while, mostly because of the way the statistic works. That number reached a little bit over 18 during the recession on state claims. We're down at about 13.8 at this point in time.
When you say 13.8, now, I'm talking number of weeks. I thought during the recession we were at 26. We were at max.
Okay, so there are a couple different things here. The average duration is the average length of time that a person who receives a first payment continues to draw unemployment.
Right.
The number of weeks that are available to individuals to draw of state unemployment benefits, so if they max out their claim, that's 26 weeks. And the one thing that you should recognize on this is that a number of states across the country have lowered that number, some as low to 8 weeks. That's the maximum that someone in their state can be eligible for. Indiana has not touched that. So through all the adjustments that we've done, an individual who files a claim for unemployment benefits, should they remain unemployed and continue to comply with the terms of the program, can qualify for 26. On average, they're getting back to work faster than that.
All right, that's what I'm asking, because before the recession, the average length of claim was somewhere around 13 weeks. Are we back to that?
Yes.
We're back to that.
Yes.
So we're back to the regular
and in fact,
average.
just one other statistic that goes along in that to track is the exhaustion rate. So the percentage of people who draw a first payment and also draw a last payment is really at historic lows, talking about 1970s numbers, the number of people who are exhausting claims for unemployment benefits.
All right, now I just want to ask you another question about your projections. Right now, you say that the benefits paid out are at a pretty low number. We're at $312 million.
Right.
So that's actually been that's at the bottom end of what we pay out. But you're projecting your fund balances based on keeping that number at the bottom as opposed to...
That is correct.
All right. So this is an optimistic projection.
So to some extent, I think there's absolutely some optimism in here. The one thing that I would say, though, Senator Italian, at this point in time is that we're actually, for the 2016 week to date, we're actually trending lower than the 2015. So even this 312 is actually a little bit higher than what our current run rate projects. The other point of this is in 2014 we were actually also at the lowest number for a long period of time. So I think it's a very good question as to how long can this continue? How long can this continue to stay low? And so yes, these are. I think that there are a lot of people who could debate some of the underlying assumptions that go into this picture, and I think it's fair to continue to ask that question.
All right, and just one more thing. Do you know what the trigger is to move to a different schedule?
So yes, and it's a bit complicated. Now remember, right now we are fixed to this Schedule E through 2020.
Okay, all right.
So we will, barring some other change, we are statutorily tied to Schedule E through 2020. So you can expect this to continue to stay there. Now, what happens in 2020 based on these projections? I mean, it looks like we'd be at about $1 billion. Right now, I think that you would forecast that schedule would lower, meaning we would take in less revenue if we reach $1 billion by 2020.
Got it. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think most people had the feeling that there needed to be around $1 billion balance to maybe deal with the next great recession. The question, I think, as Josh and Bill have noted, is as we look out the estimates 17, 18, and 19, are we going to have a little recession or a minor slowdown?
Exactly.
Would things change? I think if we would continue with our 2% robust growth, as I talked about earlier, 2% robust growth, everybody feels good about that, that if we saw that trending in 17 or 18, I think the legislature could even consider adjusting the benefit. There would be that entertainment, but there's a lot of variables. I don't want to make any promises.
I'm not ready for that.
Okay, because you want to build up fund balance.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just looking to see how long it's going to take us, and I'm suggesting it might take longer than 19.
Let's be completely honest. The original law, when it was put into place, and correct me if I'm wrong, said we would not be to this point of positive fund balance until 2018. And so we have knocked that down by 2 years, and actually 3 years because we did it at the end of 2015. Is that not correct?
That is accurate. We were looking at 2018 as the payoff year previously. If I may, just 2 points about this. One is that you'll notice that the revenue on Schedule E has dropped. So though we've been on the same schedule, that revenue is decreasing. And that's because, if you realize, with the Unemployment Insurance Fund, as employers are laying fewer people off and paying fewer claims, their rates are improving. So the thing is, even within Schedule E, there is a band of revenue, and so that's why we continue to see that revenue drop. It's obviously not less people working, it's employers paying lower rates on where people are working. The other part about this is we referenced the balance that would be necessary to be solved. And I will say, and this is new since the recession, there is a federal target for trust fund balance, and they've actually tied a little bit of a carrot to it, and it's if you meet this target, which they call the average high-cost multiple, then you can borrow interest-free through a recession. That number for Indiana at this point in time would be a little bit higher than $1 billion. It's actually it's a really difficult calculation, but what they're basically doing is they'll look at our 3 highest year payouts, so you can see this 8, 9, 10 payouts, and they're going to want you to have at least enough money in your fund to pay the average of your 3 highest years over the last 20, which is more like a 1.3 number, but the calculation's a little bit deeper than that because they actually, instead of just using pure numbers, they compare your payouts to your total taxable wages. And so there is a number out there that DOL has set as a target for states to meet.
Any further questions? Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for hard work. Next, we'll go to the Department of Education, and I believe there's a couple issues related to our Department of Education. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Brown and members of the committee. I'm Candace Batson. I'm the Director of e-learning, which is all instructional technology for the DOE. And it's my pleasure to be here this morning in my 5th annual appearance on behalf of 2 funds. the School and Library Internet Connection Fund, and the Senator David C. Ford Educational Technology Program Fund. I'm joined this morning by the IDOE Executive Director of Finance and some executive staff members from the Indiana State Library. Beginning with the Internet Connection Fund, which helps to provide global access to learning opportunities and resources for students in schools and for our communities through our libraries. And while we were grateful for the $900,000 increase in the last budget, today we would like to request the release of the School and Library Internet Connection Fund for fiscal year 2017 of $3,500,000. Of the foregoing appropriations, $2,415,000 each year will be used for the schools, and $1,085,000 each year will be used for the libraries.
Any questions? Thank you.
All right, and next regarding the David C. Ford Fund, these funds support grants, resources, and professional development for our Indiana schools as they navigate teaching and learning in the digital age. And I'm sure, as most of you are likely aware, Indiana is definitely a national leader in the digital age of learning. This work, to support this work, we ask today the Department of Education request the release of the $3,086,072 from the funds appropriated in House Bill 1001 under David C. Ford Fund.
Any questions? Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have the Public Broadcasting Service, Mr. Rhodes.
Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for seeing me today to consider the state funding request from the 9 independently owned and operated public radio stations and 8 public television stations serving Indiana. On their behalf and the Hoosiers they serve, I want to express our appreciation for the state's decision to appropriate funds both in fiscal year 2016 and 2017 to maintain Indiana's long-standing investment in Hoosier communities through their public broadcasting stations. As a result, beyond the programs that you're probably familiar with, our PBS Kids programs and Nova, Nature, the stations were able to remain focused on education, good citizenship, and community engagement. We were able to finish this year a wonderful documentary series titled Hoosiers, The Story of Indiana, and it premiered in July, and you'll see the rest of it in August. So we're very pleased that we're able to support our bicentennial efforts that way. I sent a letter. I think you should have it. Was it distributed?
Yes.
Okay. That letter indicates that, whoops, let me get it here. The letter indicates that in this biennium, each year, $363,675,000 was appropriated for the stations, and of that, $525,000 was designated for radio. And we understand that that baseline figure is subject to a 3% reserve to the state treasury, and the numbers that you see on the schedule on page 2 do reflect that 3% figure. So with that, I thank you for your consideration, and we'll be happy to take any questions.
Questions? Go ahead. It's under time.
This is not a question, but it is a comment. You know, I'm just registering my disappointment that in a grant situation like this, where the state is basically giving money to public broadcasting to do their I just think it's amazingly ridiculous that we take a 3% reversion, and I just want to say that for the record.
The record will duly note and the minutes should reflect.
I just don't see that this is necessary, and because I know that for you guys, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. So,
Director Bailey.
Friendly comment. You made this point
I
informally over dinner last night at IU, and I think my response to that is we do make exceptions when we're trying to manage spending in line with revenue. We make exceptions for tuition support, which is the largest item in our budget. We make exceptions for Medicaid. We make exceptions for the Department of Child Services and other programs. And if the exception becomes the rule, there's no way for us to manage spending. And this is just a matter of shared sacrifice among all of the agencies and programs that receive state taxpayer funds.
Representative Gooden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate you being here, and this kind of piggybacks on the Department of Education as well as the fact that we've heard a lot of talk about roads, and we heard the discussion earlier about the infrastructure of our state. And it distresses me that when we talk about infrastructure, we don't include broadband, access to broadband, and we don't include our public television and radio stations, because that is true infrastructure that will help build the state of Indiana, help move it forward. And I think in our discussions as we move forward, I think we really need to talk about the infrastructure part of this is with that roads and bridges, and probably should in front of roads and bridges maybe even should be broadband and public television and radio. And I think as we move forward, that might be a discussion that we need to talk about, because it is critical. It is not entertainment television like all the others are, and it is fact-based, and it is very, very important to a huge segment of our society, of which includes children. And with that, thank you for being here, and I think we need to include that in our conversations as we move forward.
I certainly appreciate that perspective. We're very pleased to be able to offer the state, in terms of educational children's programs in particular, what we like to call our state's largest preschool classroom. And we do vet the educational results of those programs with Representative Thompson and Senator Cruz, and we're very pleased to make that available, and I appreciate those points of views, all of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on, item 7, I-65, NDOT and IFA. Mr. Reedy and Mr. Stark.
what you were saying is they shouldn't have to do that, right?
Good morning. My name's Jim Stark. I'm Deputy Commissioner for Innovative Project Delivery at NDOT and IFA, and Mike Reedy is here with me from NDOT. He's our Senior Project Manager for this project. I was asked this question this last week, why we were coming in front of the committee, so we wanted to make sure the purpose here. NDOT, in 2011, both NDOT and IFA have P3 statutes, and NDOT is using their P3 statute to procure this project. So in statute, we are required to come in front of the committee prior to the proposers getting their final RFP, which we've been working on, and distribute the actual draft RFP so that the committee can have it, and then we're here in front of the committee to review it. So that's, and then once we go through the procurement process here and get proposals, we'll be back in front of the committee this fall to tell everybody how we did through the process itself. The project overview for this project, this is what we call the I-65 Northwest Indiana Major Moves 2020 expansion project. We're constructing additional travel lanes along I-65 within existing median from State Road 2, which is mile marker 240, north to US 231, mile marker 247, and constructing outside shoulders and restriping from 4 lanes to 6 lanes from US 231 to north of US 30. And also the replacement of, there's 2 Kankakee bridges, river bridges. Most of this work is in Lake County, and then it moves down to the other county. There's no financing in this project. The money's already been appropriated, and anticipation construction will be 2 years starting in spring of 2017. This is a picture of the actual road expansion project itself. You can see the red area is the northern portion, the yellow area the southern portion, and then the Kankakee River bridges are down below, shown in green. This has been our procurement schedule. We're at this point now where in front of the committee we will be issuing the final RFP in August, and then the procurements will be due the first part of September, which we'll do the evaluation process at that time. We'll go through this fall, and then we'll get to closing and notice to proceed first part of next year for construction to start in 2017. I'm going to turn the rest of this over to Mike. He'll go through the last couple pages of the slideshow and talk a little bit about the teams and how we will actually evaluate the teams in the RFP.
Yeah, we got 4 shortlisted teams. These are in alphabetical order. K5 Construction Corporation with their lead engineer firm, Jansen Spons Engineering. Lane Construction Corporation with their lead engineer firm as Lockmiller Group. We have Reith Riley Construction Company with their lead engineer firm as AECOM. And the Walsh Construction Company, 2, with their lead engineering firm as Parsons Transportation Group. Evaluation process is technical proposal. Best value evaluations will be conducted by separate teams. Evaluators are all NDOT personnel supported by staff and consultants. No communication will occur between the technical and financial teams until both teams have fully completed their evaluations. And the final step of combining technical and price scores will result in a total score out of a maximum 100 points. The best value determination, again, for the total proposal score using a 100-point scale. We have 2 major elements to that score. We have 40 points for the technical proposal score and 60 points for the price proposal score.
Is that kind of standard in the industry to have that ratio and the technical be 40 and the price be 60?
It is a close standard, but this was developed using the I-69 Hamilton County project proposal, and we thought it was a good fit for this project as well. Good question, thank you. The technical proposal score determined by 2 major elements, and those are the preliminary project management plan worth 25 points and the preliminary design build plan worth the 75 points. Price proposal, of course, is built for the actual price submitted by the proposer teams. It represents the 60 of the total 100 points possible for the project score. Our best value determination. Final step merges both technical and price scores together to a maximum of 100 points available. Combination of scores determined by formula. Our total proposal score is out of 100, and price proposal up to 60 points, plus the technical proposal up to 40 points. And if anybody has any questions,
Senator Kenley.
So will this project enhance the concept that we would like to have 6 lanes on I-65 all the way from Chicago to Louisville?
Actually, this is the next extension down. If you go to where 30 is now, up to Chicago, there's 6 lanes. In fact, some areas a little more. So this is bringing them down to actually to 2. So yes, this is part of that whole process.
Senator Talley.
Do you have a ballpark expectation of what you think this project is going to cost?
Internally, our budget is set around $75 million. We predict the cost to be about $75 million.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, this is the paper. Next, 211 Services, Indiana Regulatory Commission. Ms. Mosley.
Hope we don't go through this.
Hello.
25 pages here.
Mr. Chairman, hi, good morning. And members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Shatrice Mosley. I'm the Executive Director of External Affairs for the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission. The purpose of my testimony today, as you know, is to present for your review the Commission's plan to administer the budget allocations to the Indiana 211 service account. The Commission has been charged by the Indiana legislature with administering the 211 services account, which has entered its second year through appropriations from the Indiana General Assembly. As part of its statutory duty, the Commission has developed this plan regarding the administration and use of the funds in the 211 services account for review by the State Budget Committee. State law requires the Commission, after consulting with the Board of Directors of the Indiana 211 Partnership, to submit a plan for the expenditure of the money appropriated to the 211 services account prior to the disbursements of those funds. The plan must include a strategy or plan to address the following service priorities: assistance for parental stress issues, domestic violence, infant mortality, assistance for veterans, services for senior citizens, services for vulnerable children, and public health issues. After consulting with Indiana 211 Partnership, the Commission has identified the following 4 interrelated and mutually reinforcing objectives that address the service priorities for which the appropriated funds will be dispersed. 37% of the fund will be allocated for continuing to improve database resources and reporting by the end of the fiscal year. 22.5% of the fund will be allocated for increasing the number of people served. The number of people in need helped by 211 increased approximately 4% last fiscal year. 29.5% of the fund will be for maintaining after-hours access availability 24 hours per day, 7 days per week, 365 days per year. 11% of the fund will be used for maintaining operational support through the entirety of the fiscal year. To expend the appropriated funds, the Commission and Indiana 211 Partnership will enter into a grant agreement pursuant to Indiana law as well. The grant agreement will provide the terms for the disbursement of the fund from the account to 211. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Senator Talley.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Do you have some, and I, looking through this, do you have some idea of how many people you're serving?
How many people 211 serves?
Yeah.
I think that's on one of the appendices for
Is it?
211. I believe so. Huh?
It's approximately 600,000 people are served in terms of contacts.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we go to Family and Social Service Administration, Mr. Mosier.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have 5 items to present for your review this morning. The first 2 are related to each other, so I will present them as sort of a package. In our home and community-based waiver programs for individuals with disabilities, the budget bill last year instructed FSSA to increase rates for residential habilitation and supports, respite care, community-based habilitation, and facility-based habilitation that were reduced in 2010 by 2.5% and then increased them another 2.5% effective July 1st, 2016, for a total of 5% increase for those services. Those are services provided by direct support professionals in individuals' homes, which allow them to live in their homes instead of in institutions. So we submitted to the federal government waiver amendments that would enact those rate increases in the Community Integration Habilitation Waiver, the CIH waiver it's called, and the Family Supports Waiver, and those were submitted on July 6, 2016. The CIH waiver also includes a 5% rate increase to restore case management services that were reduced in 2012, and that change would also be effective on July 1st, 2016. The fiscal impact of these changes were included in the December Medicaid forecast. In the CIH waiver, they amount to about a total of $16 million in state fiscal year 16, of which about $8 million of that is state share, and in this state fiscal year 17, total is about $25.8 million, of which $12.8 million is the state share. Any questions about those?
Any questions? Continue.
Okay. Next, I want to talk about a state plan amendment for psychosocial rehabilitation, also known as clubhouse services. This state plan amendment would make conforming changes to the state plan to reimburse psychosocial rehabilitation as a Medicaid rehabilitation option MRO service, also referred to as clubhouse. The proposed service is necessary to reinforce the continuum of care by offering community-based supports as a member transitions to an increased level of independence and community integration. A clubhouse psychosocial rehabilitation service is a community-based psychosocial rehabilitation program in which individuals with a serious mental illness with staff assistance are engaged in operating aspects of an accredited clubhouse program, including food service, clerical, reception, janitorial, and other member services such as employment training, housing assistance, and educational supports. So this is a program that helps members with severe mental illness and/or co-occurring substance use disorders remain in the community and be productive citizens. I will tell you this is a model that works. I personally visited 2 of these clubhouse model programs, one in Carriage House in Fort Wayne, one in the Circle City Clubhouse in Indianapolis, and I find them to be very effective in serving individuals with severe mental illness and getting them educational needs and employment opportunities. We did reimburse for this service in 2010, and we suspended reimbursement due to some billing issues that we had with the providers at that time, and then since then we have found a way to amend this program to do it in a way that is fiscally responsible to taxpayers, helps monitor the billing better. It will limit reimbursement to a certain number of hours per week per individual, and we're also only going to be including clubhouses that are accredited with international certification, which is the highest standard of accreditation for these types of services. Currently in the state there are 4 organizations that would qualify for reimbursement once this starts. So I'd be happy to take any questions you have about this one.
Thank you.
Okay.
Continue.
Next, I want to talk about a state plan amendment that transitions Indiana's Medicaid nursing facility reimbursement system from the RUG 3 model to the RUG 4 model. This is a change that will provide a better tool for OMPP to ensure that Medicaid reimbursement is properly allocated according to a resident's resource needs. This state plan amendment also makes a couple of other changes. We removed the rate reduction for group home rates. There was a small drafting error in the state budget bill last year that prevented the group homes from getting an extra 0.09% of their rate restored as was originally intended, so that error was fixed. in the most recent legislative session, and this state plan amendment would ask for the federal government to resolve that mistake that was made. So I'll be happy to take any questions about that one.
The industry is involved in going to the RUGS 4 model.
They're very much in favor of it. So this involves a classification system for the severity of patients that are served in their facilities. Currently, we use a model that has 36 classifications. RUG 4 has 48, and so it allows us to more specifically tie reimbursement to the acuity of the patients served. They have been, the nursing facility industry has been working with us over a number of years now to make this transition, and this is their preferred reimbursement model.
Is RUGS 5 down the road?
I am not aware of a RUGS 5 yet. There is different versions of RUGS 4, and we debated on which version to use, and this is the one that FSSA and the industry agreed upon.
Okay. Any questions? Continue. Go
Okay.
ahead.
The final state plan amendment has to do with group home rates. This state plan amendment is to freeze the current home health rates beginning in state fiscal year 2017 due to a need to update the reimbursement system. OMPP, in collaboration with the home health industry, has begun a process to update reimbursement system to create a rate that's focused on quality instead of volume and encourages growth in the home health industry. The current reimbursement methodology, we feel, is flawed and doesn't reflect the actual value of the services that are provided, nor does it reward quality care. And so we feel that it's needed to move to a model that reimburses the home health providers based on quality outcomes and value instead of just paying for volume. So while we work with the industry around that new payment system, we felt it necessary to freeze the rates and prevent a proposed reduction from going into effect. This does have a cost, but the cost was accounted for in the most recent Medicaid forecast. We assumed that rates were going to increase as they historically had, rate about 1.5% each year. The methodology actually showed that rates would go down slightly this year, but we had budgeted for the increase. So by freezing rates, that is will be provided already in the state appropriation that was in the budget bill.
Question? Thank you.
Sure. Chairman?
Ribbit. Thank you, Jeff. Next we go to item 10, Indiana Board for Depositories. Ms. Moores.
Good morning. I'm Diana Merce Davis. I'm the Executive Director for the Indiana Board for Depositories. And I'm simply here. I prepared a short report to report on the status of the collateralization program and the balance of the PDIF funds. I'm going to do a brief overview of the collateralization program and how it works. Then I'll go on to the current status of the depositories in Indiana, and then I'll talk about a little bit about the balance of the PDIF. In 2010, we developed a collateralization program to supplement the PDIF. The PDIF was established in 1937 in response to the Great Depression in case there was a depository failure. In 2010, we added the collateralization program as well, which puts some onus on banks to fulfill requirements for reporting, and along with that, required that the Board for Depositories report to the committee twice per year as to the status of the PDIF. The collateralization program is a tiered system. It is based on a Bank Insight National Rating, which we gather from SNL Financial. Based on that rating, which is similar to a personal credit score, you can see at the bottom of page 1 the matrix there. Based on that rating, a bank is either required to not collateralize at all, collateralize 50% of their public funds, or collateralize 100% of their public funds. This report is for the second half of fiscal year 2016. You can see there the number of financial institutions in the third quarter was 158 financial institutions, with the balance being $13.1 billion in those institutions. in the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2016, we had 160 depositories, and the balance was $13.2 billion. On the third page, you can see the status of the banks, the depositories overall. The average collateral rating was a 0% requirement. The institutions overall are very healthy. As you can see in the third quarter, the average rating was a 57, and the fourth quarter was a 58. The collateral summary is indicated on that chart. On the very left-hand side, you can see the percentage that each is required to collateralize, the 0, 50, 100, and we do have a voluntary 100 category. What that means is that if a bank voluntarily collateralizes all of their public funds, which means they put them into an account named to the Board for Depositories that only we have access to, that if the board was ever to decide that we need to charge assessments to beef up the PDIF, essentially, that they would not have to pay fees on their public funds. So that's an option for depositories as well. So as you can see, each count is listed as to the amount or percentage that they have to collateralize, as well as their average daily balances. Lastly, the Public Deposit Insurance Fund is doing well. We have a balance of over $300 million. And we also, that includes a $35 million receivable from the State General Assembly that was borrowed. And actually, as of today, I believe that last $5 million is supposed to post a little bit early. So that will make the receivable $30 million. There have been no draws on the PDIF for the last 6 months. And as of July 2013, the interest on the PDIF is no longer transferred to the Police Firefighter Pension Fund. Any questions?
Do you, thank you. Do you have any information of what it was a year ago? The number, I mean, you have a count of 3 institutions at 100% cap for collateralization.
Right. And
Is that the same number compared to a year ago?
We added one more depository. I can tell you out of the 3 that are posting at 100%, one of those does not hold public funds. We have one more than we did the first half of fiscal year 2016. But their credit rating, I can tell you, went up this quarter. And we do have someone from Department of Financial Institutions on our board. While I'm not regulatory, I do use him if I see someone fall into the 100% category to see where that trend is going. And they are not at a risk for failure.
Senator Talley.
You said that the interest used to go to police and firefighters' pension, which is pretty fully funded. Where does the interest go now?
It remains in the fund.
It stays in the fund.
Right.
And how much money is that?
Fund. It's over $300 million.
No, how much is the interest? Like
the interest
yearly
is
ballpark?
around a little over $100,000 a year, I believe. It gets invested, so it just gets added to the fund.
It just gets added back.
Director Bailey.
When the report says public funds, does that mean state and local government funds or just state government funds?
State and local government funds.
Okay. What's the breakdown in the $13 billion figure there between the state and local?
We don't keep a record of the breakdown. Department of Financial Institutions would see the individual accounts, but we don't monitor the individual deposits that are going into institutions.
Another question. If there's a distressed bank that had public funds in it and those funds were no longer available, what would be the recourse besides the PDIF fund?
First, FDIC coverage would kick in for each depositor. Then the process is that the
Depositor including the state and local governments?
Right,
Okay.
right. For each account. And then the Attorney General's office would then kick in first. They would take a look at the accounts in the bank that are claimed to be public funds, certify those as public funds or not. Then the Auditor of State and the board would weigh in, and it would be in court litigated if needed, if there was any dispute.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You have the reports received. I believe we have additional copies at our desk on the reports received. We've had discussion of construction projects and review items. Are there any motions to remove any items from the agenda?
Move the agenda be adopted as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded the agenda be adopted. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Agenda is adopted. Thank you very much. Who had the over and under of 1 o'clock?
Wow.
I didn't put any money on it.
We are adjourned. We're planning to have a meeting in September.